I am the Executive Director at Jewish Child and Family Service. JCFS is proud to be part of this year's Shoah Week events. JCFS is the agency that interfaces to provide services to Holocaust survivors in Winnipeg, and on behalf of the Conference on Jewish Material Claims against Germany in New York. We also work very closely with the Cummings Center for Seniors in Montreal. JCFS is proud and honored of our work with the over 125 survivors that seek services from our agency every year. We are dedicated not only to the direct supports and assistance that we provide survivors, but also to our commitment to Holocaust education, awareness, and advocacy. We see this as holy work, and that it is our obligation to honor their experiences and preserve their stories and their legacies. Today's program will target this by addressing both our personal and collective obligation to remember and honor the victims of the Holocaust and the survivors. I would like to introduce Adina Lungen to provide some opening remarks. Adina is a social worker in the Support Services to Holocaust Survivors program at JCFS. She has over 20 years of experience working with survivors and their families. Adina is passionate about her work with survivors, not only as the child of a survivor herself, but also her depth of caring and commitment to treating each survivor with the respect, dignity, and honor that they deserve. Adina?
Thank you, Al. When most of us hear the term Holocaust Remembrance, what usually comes to mind are memorial programs, candle lighting services, community commemorative events, and so on. All of these are important and meaningful ways to honor and remember both victims and survivors of the Holocaust. Beyond these rituals of remembrance, how we live our lives is also a form of remembrance. Today, we will be looking at the meaning of Holocaust remembrance as seen through the eyes of survivors, as well as second and third generation children and grandchildren of survivors. We know that how we remember is as crucial as what we remember. To quote the late Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sacks, the former chief rabbi of the United Kingdom, there is a difference between history and memory. History is information. Memory, by contrast, is part of identity. Memory is the past as present, as it lives in me. How that memory shapes the lives and consciousness of survivors and their descendants is the focus of our presentation. The Hebrew word zachor, along with the term never forget, are directives to ensure that each generation post-Holocaust becomes a link in the chain of memory. Each link, each person preserves the continuity of history and bears witness to the experiences of those that came before. Each link ensures that the voices of victims and survivors are not forgotten. When survivors are no longer able to tell and share their experiences, the obligation to remember on their behalf falls to the children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren. In remembering, we assume personal and collective responsibility for how we transmit the memories of survivors. In remembering, we learn and are transformed. In remembering, we commit to the term never again. We become the reassurance to survivors that their history has meaning from which future generations will learn. Through our work with survivors at Jewish Child and Family Service, we believe that the memories and stories passed on by them to their children and grandchildren become a source of strength and a call to action in positive and corrective ways. Holocaust remembrance is not only about inheriting and sharing stories and memories of survivors. It is about transforming them into actions that honor their survival. Each act of tikkun olam, each act of speaking out against intolerance is a form of remembering. In today's program, you will see presentations from Holocaust survivors, second and third generation children and grandchildren. Some of them will be speaking, others will use music as a way of remembering and commemorating the Holocaust. As many survivors in our community come from the former Soviet Union and have chosen to make Winnipeg their home, we are very happy to include our Russian-speaking survivors and families in our presentation. Your joining us here today is a testament to the collective imperative embodied in the term Zachor, and we are grateful for your presence. Please note that the presentations in today's program have been pre-recorded. The sound quality will vary, and you may need to adjust your volume accordingly. Also, today's program is being recorded and may be available for future use. We thank you in advance for your patience. And now, I would like to welcome Margarita Iskijayev. Margarita is a social worker in our older adult program. She works with our Russian-speaking survivors, and she will now repeat these comments in Russian. Thank you.
Здравствуйте. Когда большинство из нас слышит термин «воспоминания о Холокосте», на ум обычно приходят мемориальные программы, службы зажигания свечей, памятные мероприятия в общинах. Все это важные и значимые способы почтить память как жертв, так и выживших. Помимо этих ритуалов воспоминания, то, как мы живем, также является формой воспоминания. Сегодня мы рассмотрим значение памяти о Холокосте глазами выживших, а также второго и третьего поколения, детей и внуков выживших. Мы знаем, что то, как мы запоминаем, так же важно, как и то, что мы помним. Процитируя покойного раввина лорда Джонатана Сакса, главного раввина Соединенного Королевства, который сказал: «Есть разница между историей и памятью. История — это информация, а память — это часть идентичности. Память — это прошлое, как и настоящее. Оно живет во мне». То, как память формирует жизнь и сознание выживших и их потомков, находится в центре внимания нашей презентации. Еврейское слово «скор» вместе с термином «никогда не забывай» — это директивы, гарантирующие, что каждое поколение после Холокоста станет звеном в цепи памяти. Каждое звено, каждый человек сохраняет преемственность истории и свидетельствует об опыте тех, кто был раньше. Каждое звено этой цепи — это голоса жертв и выживших. Они не будут забыты. Когда выжившие больше не могут рассказывать и делиться своим опытом, обязанность помнить от их имени ложится на их детей, внуков и правнуков. Вспоминая, мы берем на себя личную и коллективную ответственность за то, как мы передаем воспоминания выживших. Вспоминая, мы учимся и трансформируемся. Вспоминая, мы обязуемся использовать термин «никогда больше». Мы заверяем выживших в том, что их история имеет значение, на которое будет учиться будущее поколение. Работая с выжившими в еврейской службе семьи и ребенка, мы верим, что воспоминания и истории, которые они передают своим детям и внукам, становятся источником силы и призывом к позитивным и корректирующим действиям. Память о Холокосте — это не только унаследовать и поделиться историями и воспоминаниями выживших. Речь идет о том, чтобы преобразовать их в действия, которые чтят их выживание. Каждый акт тикун олам, изменение мира, каждое выступление против нетерпимости — это форма воспоминания. В сегодняшнем мероприятии мы собрали переживших Холокост, их детей и внуков, второе и третье поколение. Некоторые из них будут говорить. Другие будут использовать музыку как способ вспомнить и увековечить память Холокоста. В нашей программе также будут англоговорящие и русскоязычные участники. Ваше присоединение к нам сегодня является свидетельством коллективной памяти, воплощенного в слове «скор». И мы благодарны за ваше присутствие. Большое спасибо. Thank you. I would like to introduce my co-worker, Heather Mendel-Kraut. She is a social worker and older adult service and mental health departments.
I would now like to welcome Edith Kimmelman, who will say a few words about Holocaust Remembrance. Edith Kimmelman is a Holocaust child survivor born in Rovno, Poland, which is now the Ukraine. Edith fled from her home in the fall of 1941. After hiding out during the war years and spending time in DP camps, she arrived in Winnipeg in June of 1949. Edith entered the field of education in the 1970s and has been sharing experiences of her past with students and adults for the past 51 years.
I'm privileged to be part of the Holocaust Survivors group participating in today's commemorative program. We are the remnants of the Shoah survivors. Our numbers are diminishing at a very rapid pace. We have little time and ability left to teach when there is still so very much to learn. However, we can advise and guide you. Hopefully, thus we may leave a legacy to you and your descendants, a means to build a safer future for yourselves and all humankind. Anti-Semitism is invasive, very much like the COVID-19 virus and its variants we are presently experiencing. Anti-Semitism constantly mutates. Our only hope to control it is to be vigilant to its ever-changing form. We cannot afford to allow it to spread. We cannot allow to lower our guard and have it spread uncontrolled to the point where it reaches catastrophic proportions. I singled out the word anti-Semitism, for as a Jew, it is the most familiar experience to me. I had to endure its force in Europe from the time I understood that being a Jew meant unwelcome to share my space in life with non-Jews. Racism, bigotry, discrimination, unwarranted hatred, intolerance of others, and deprivation are universal. We, Shoah survivors, have aged and become old. We fulfilled our mission by sharing with you and anyone who would listen to us the experiences not only of our tragic past, which cost us the lives of 6 million of our own. We are also testimony to our resilience to survive, to rebuild our lives, and have faith in a better future. We are placing our trust in you, our second, third, and fourth generation, to be our defenders and dedicated fighters for peace. You are the descendants of survivors, survivors who taught you never to lose hope, to always strive for acceptance and tolerance of others. We know you will not let us down. It is you who can make certain that words never again were not said in vain. Good luck in your endeavors to accomplish positive change for the benefit of ourselves and all humanity. Mazal uvracha, kol tuv.
Hi. Hi, my name is Anna Shoihit, and I am a settlement worker at Jewish Child and Family Service. It is my privilege to introduce to you Isaac Gottlieb. He is a Holocaust survivor who was born in Ukraine. Isaac has 40 years of experience working as a surgeon at Neftegansk Medical Hospital in Russia. He was part of a partnership program between his hospital in Russia and hospital in Calgary. Isaac Gottlieb currently lives in Winnipeg with his family and enjoys his role as a grandfather and great-grandfather. Здравствуйте, меня зовут Аня Шойхет. Это большая честь для меня представить вам Исаака Готлиба. Он, переживший Холокост, родился в Украине. Исаак имеет 40-летний стаж работы хирургом в Нефтеюганском медицинском госпитале в России. Он был участником партнерской программы между его больницей в России и госпиталем в Калгари. Исаак Готлиб в настоящее время проживает в Виннипеге со своей семьей и наслаждается своей ролью дедушки и прадедушки.
Когда в 1933 году в Германии к власти пришли нацисты, они поставили перед собой цель уничтожить евреев. И из 9 миллионов евреев, живших тогда в Европе, 2/3, 6 миллионов, были убиты. Когда началась война, мне не было еще 5 лет, но я помню, как наш город Запорожье, в котором мы жили, бомбили фашисты. Рядом с нашим домом был разрушен мой детский садик, куда я ходил, и был убит наш сторож. А через какое-то время был разрушен и наш дом, в котором мы жили. Мои родители работали на авиационном заводе, и наша семья, как и многие другие семьи, вместе с этим заводом были эвакуированы в Сибирь, в город Омск. Ехали мы товарным поездом, и в пути наш поезд был подвержен бомбардировке, но наш вагон все-таки уцелел. И когда мы приехали в Омск, нас поселили в бараке. В комнате 9 квадратных метров, семья была 5 человек. Причем в этом бараке не было ни воды, ни туалета. И в лютые сибирские морозы мы бегали в так называемый туалет-уборную на улицу. И воду мы тоже приносили в ведрах с улицы для приготовления пищи. Мы не только замерзали, но и голодали. Продукты были по карточкам. Хлеба в продаже в магазинах свободного вообще не было, его тоже давали только работникам. И я помню, как мама с работы приносила полбулки хлеба на всю семью, на всю неделю. И она так поровну на всех нам делила. И вместо хлеба мы кушали жмых, это сухой остаток после отжима семечек. И нам тогда казалось это вкусным. А корочка хлеба, натертая чесноком, вообще считалась деликатесом. Прошло много лет. Мы переехали в Израиль, и там мы посещали Яд Вашем. Это мемориальный комплекс, посвященный памяти жертв Холокоста. Это своеобразный памятник каждому еврею, погибшему в Холокосте. Холокост – это трагедия не только еврейского народа, это катастрофа для всего человечества. И думаю, поэтому Генеральная ассамблея Организации Объединенных Наций приняла резолюцию в день освобождения тысяч евреев из концлагеря Освенцим 27 января считать Международным днем памяти жертв Холокоста. Но я все-таки думаю, что память о тех трагических событиях должна быть не только сохранена, должна быть не только в памятниках и мемориалах. Эта память должна быть сохранена в наших детях, внуках и правнуках. Эта память необходимо сохранить для того, чтобы эта трагедия больше никогда не повторилась. И вот сейчас вот этот мой короткий рассказ снимает на камеру моя внучка Даша, у которой уже 3 своих детей, это 3 моих правнука. И когда они вырастут, она обязательно будет им об этом рассказывать. Это нужно для того, чтобы эта трагедия больше никогда не повторилась.
Our next presenter is Clara Belkin. Clara is a survivor of Bergen-Belsen concentration camp. Clara was born in Hungary and came to Canada in 1957 during the Hungarian Revolution. Clara was principal cellist of the Winnipeg Symphony Orchestra and a professor of music at the University of Manitoba. Clara will be playing a short, unaccompanied arrangement of the Kol Nidre Prayer, composed by Max Bruch in 1880. I am pleased to introduce Ruth Elizabeth Stargarder, the daughter of Holocaust survivors David and Margot Rosenbaum. Ruth is married to Alan, who is also a child of Holocaust survivors Kurt and Gertrude Stargarder. Ruth and Alan have been married almost 43 years and have two children, Matthew and Sean. Ruth is an educational psychologist who has worked with students and adults in private practice, in the school system, and now as part of the government. Ruth and her husband grew up and reside in Garden City. Ruth will be sharing her insights and thoughts about the ways in which she honors her parents and pays tribute to their legacy as Holocaust survivors. Directly after Ruth's presentation, we will hear from Oleg Pokanovsky, son of Holocaust survivor Victor Pokanovsky.
I'm here to honor my parents, Holocaust survivors, Margot Esther Rosenbaum, born in Berlin, Germany, and David Rosenbaum, born in Poltusk, Poland, and to shine a spotlight on all children of Holocaust survivors. I cherish my life because it was given to me by people who experienced incredible loss and grief, and who helped me to learn to respect the beating heart, the breath that I often held overwhelmed with the fear that surrounded me every day as I feared losing them. I'm an educational psychologist, and as many children of Holocaust survivors, have spent my life helping to heal people, helping them to build self-respect and develop skills for personal empowerment, as well as stand up for social justice. My life has been spent immersed in the world of education, the key to fight hatred and misunderstanding. I always wished I could have made life better for my parents. I am so happy that they found each other, and will do my best to explain why we have a torch to carry and a legacy to fulfill. It is my honor to be with you here today. From the moment of my first breath, my parents have been and will always be my guiding stars, and have always steered me in the right direction and helped me sail into an amazing life journey. I can never properly repay them. I want to honor the loving memory of my father, David Rosenbaum. May his memory be a blessing, who passed 2.5 years ago, and show love, compassion, and respect for my mother, Margot Rosenbaum. As a child of Holocaust survivors, it is my duty to ensure I do whatever is possible to ensure the Holocaust never happens again, and to value the miracle of my life and the lives of my parents. I grew up feeling like a gift to my parents. I was treasured and protected. Perhaps I was a promise of a future for so many loved ones that they lost. I grew up as a listener, a watcher. I absorbed their pain, laughed with them, cried with them, loved them, and protected them. I grew up in awe of their strength, their passion for life, people, Yiddishkeit, family. We celebrated each Jewish holiday, enjoyed Jewish stories and folklore. I knew their lives in a new country was difficult. They worked so hard. A sadness has always rested at the periphery of my consciousness, an old and intimate companion, and I know it will remain as long as I am connected to this world. This is a part of my legacy. While it does not obscure my capacity for joy, it does coexist with it. My sadness is for their losses, for the evil I know can exist in the human heart, and mind for how I wish they could have lived their life dreams. My parents' experiences as Holocaust survivors affected who I have become and how I live my life. I thank them dearly for shaping who I have become. My brother and I will forever share their legacies as long as we live. I choose to share my parents' stories to keep alive the memories of survivors and hundreds of family members I will never meet. Many of their names I do not even know, pictures I do not have, as well as ensure that such a genocide will never happen again. I remember and honor my parents through Tikkun Olam, repair of the world. I live by Jewish principles as my parents did, and relay those principles to my children through every breath and every action. I am and will always be proud of my religion and my heritage. My parents helped me to develop the tools to live a life impacted by the Holocaust. They shared the lessons I and my children live and will remember as a living legacy to them. What are the lessons I've learned? Be the very best person you can be. Cherish education and let your heart and your wisdom guide you. Love and faith are powerful and can sustain us. See the beauty in the world that does exist. Find joy in the simple but very meaningful things. Strive for a clearer understanding of good and evil, fortitude and integrity, truth and belief. Fight for democracy and be the voice for those who cannot speak. My parents embraced others, truly listened to them, and made them feel like our family. They were embraced, valued, cared for, and protected. It did not matter who they were nor where they came from. Commit to observe mitzvah and inspire your children to do so. Cherish opportunities for education, knowledge, and stay current with world issues. Cherish books, conversation, learning about others' opinions, thoughts, and beliefs. Mourn the deceased. Remember them. Think of them. Say Kaddish for them. I place a pebble on my father's gravestone, and I visit the graves marked and unmarked of deceased family members. My father taught me that I need not live in a state of constant fear, anxiously awaiting the next catastrophe, but to embrace the joys and wonders of life. Cherish the memories of the past that shaped us, the family Yom Tov meals, learning about my dad's family and his pet chicken, my mom's memories of her childhood before the war, understanding our past, no matter how difficult it can help us make choices that lead to a more harmonious future in the world. As a daughter of Holocaust survivors, carrying on my parents' legacy, I must not only bring awareness, but I must also turn awareness into action. L'Dor Vador, generation to generation. We must keep their memories alive so that we will not forget. We will stay strong and committed to our values, and we will not let the Holocaust deniers win. I share the message I learned from my dad that you're stronger than you think you are. From my mother, unfortunately, don't trust people. My parents were so strong, resilient, and survived. Dad would never want to burden us with his pain, but only want to relieve us of our own. Mom relieves her pain through incredible anxiety and fear and struggles to show weakness. You have to speak up for yourself, Ruthie, my dad would say. My dad could resolve conflict like a diplomat with dignity and respect. You have to speak up on your behalf, and you have to speak up on other people's behalf. An analogy to the be silent is being complicit. The lessons I attempt to impart include: be proud of your name as it was given in honor of a relative you may never have met and you are memorializing. Never take your rights for granted. My parents' legacies live on in me and in my children. My parents taught us the truth. Teach your children the truth. Prepare them for the real world so they can be strong and protect themselves from the challenges of the harshness of the world. I will continue to pay tribute to my parents and to all survivors. They have taught me how to live and how to find joy where I can, to cherish it, attempt to remain positive, spread the good, find the beauty, and fight evil. My parents taught me the importance of acceptance, compassion, and empathy for others. They taught me to truly listen to others, to walk in their shoes. As an educator and educational psychologist, I believe I have a responsibility to maintain my parents' promise to the world of never again by preparing students and the public, my colleagues, to address social injustice. I work to help students to apply historical lessons to enable them to be informed global citizens. I have addressed social issues with my students and the role that hate, speech, and racial discrimination play in undermining civic society. My parents taught me to be a good person who stands up for those who feel they don't have a voice and counsel, educate, walk with, and empower people to not fear their voice, turn their fear into action, and use their internal powers to fight against hatred and ignorance, to not turn a blind eye to the atrocities going on in our current world. It is important to find hope in despair, find connection in a shared grief, to discover the joy of working to create a less fearful world so that we can keep the survivors' torch lit and the path forward illuminated. Remember and honor. May God grant all of us the wisdom to heal through our dark emotions and bring the gifts of my parents that they brought of gratitude, joy, and faith, of compassion and courage to our children and to our children's children, and find peace in beauty of the world. Mom and Dad, I pray that I continue to make you proud. Thank you for giving me life and the lessons to live it as a proud Jewish person. I love you.
Hello, everybody. I'm Oleg Bohanovsky, and I'm a concert violinist and a professor at the University of Manitoba. I'll be happy to play for you a very special piece written by Ernest Bloch, who was a really great composer. He wrote a set of 3 pieces, which is called Balsham. It also has a name of 3 pictures of Hasidic life. So the names of each piece is Repentance, Improvisation, and Rejoicing. So the second one, Improvisation, is the one you will hear today. And like I said, it's very special. I think it's not just the best one in the set, but it's probably one of the very best compositions written for violin or any other instrument, Jewish compositions, first of all. So a little bit about history of Baal Shem. He was a very special man, Rabbi Israel ben Eliezer. He was a Jewish practitioner of practical Kabbalah and supposedly a miracle worker. Employing the names of God, angels, good and evil spirits, Baal Shem was claimed to heal, treat various health issues, protect people from disaster due to fire, robbery, or evil eye, foresee the future, decipher dreams, and bless those who sought his powers. There were legendary tales about his life and behavior collected in the book, which is called In Praise of Baal Shem Tov. His teaching is in direct connection with the divine. Prayer is of supreme importance, along with the mystical significance of Hebrew letters and words. Now a little bit about the piece again. Nigun means tune or melody. It is a form of Jewish religious song. So plural is nigunim. They're largely improvisations reflecting the teachings and charisma of the spiritual leadership of the congregation. They're especially central to worship in Hasidic Judaism. They're soulful forms reflecting the mystical joy of intense prayer. So again, I'm really happy to play this piece for you today because it is, why is it so special? It is a kind of a confession and a prayer to God at the same time. There's a vast range of emotions throughout the piece, as you will hear, from happiness to pain and anguish, as if Bloch was picturing life and history of Jewish people. Yet the sense of hope and faith is always present in this masterpiece. Toward the very end of the piece, the question arises, and it ends unsolved in a mystery. I hope you'll enjoy the piece now.
Our next presenter is Skye Neller. Skye is the granddaughter of Holocaust survivors Ted Muller and the late Marie Muller. Skye is a graduate of Joseph Wolinski Collegiate. Skye has always been connected to Winnipeg's Jewish community and to the Chevra Mishnayos synagogue. Skye participated in the March of the Living, which left a powerful impact on her identity and her commitment to Judaism and Jewish causes. Skye's presentation today is from a 2019 Limud presentation addressing the ways in which she honors the legacy of her grandparents as survivors. Following Skye's presentation, we will hear from Tatiana Reutman-Mann, granddaughter of Lubov Chichtaut.
Going to go up next. I'm Skye. Hello. I can't go off book like you, sorry. Sometimes we cannot help but ask ourselves hypothetical questions. Many of us indulge our fantasies by asking, what would we do if those winning 6 numbers came in? Where would I be if I got to this school, moved to that city? What item would you grab if your home, God forbid, was on fire? The last example is really asking you to prioritize your values. What would I try to salvage? Without hesitation, I can say that I would grab my grandparents' video testimonies, recorded in the early 1990s as part of Steven Spielberg's monumental mission to collect at least 50,000 accounts of survival for the Shoah Visual History Foundation. Their story in their words is the most important thing that I have. As the proud grandchild of 2 Holocaust survivors, I can tell you that the opportunity to speak to witnesses directly is becoming a fading privilege. Though I'm here to represent the 3rd generation, I do not claim to encompass their entire or individual experiences. I can only speak about what I know, and that is this. What was once a hypothetical question facing my parents' generation has become the burgeoning responsibility of mine. That question is, how do we tell someone else's story? Time is no longer a luxury we can afford, and we have to handle this matter with dignity and care in order to honor the legacy of our Holocaust survivors. When we talk to and about survivors, we must consider the danger of the single story. Yes, my grandparents have suffered and struggled and seen things I cannot even fathom. But if you show a person as one thing over and over again, that's what they become. A victim, an orphan, displaced. To focus on only one aspect of their lives is to flatten the survivor's experience. We cannot reduce someone's identity to a single story because it removes the possibility of similarity of different people connecting as equals. And so it has become my mission, you use the word mission, to share the complete and complex stories of my grandparents in order to both live and teach the lessons of their past. I have to say that being the granddaughter of Teddy and Marie Muller has been a masterclass in Menschlichkeit. They have lived their lives mishoah letikuna, from destruction to rebirth. They didn't allow pain to define their ever-unfolding story. Instead, perseverance has. These so-called victims became business owners. An orphan from Paris became a mother. And a DP from Romania found his place in the Jewish community here. As active agents of Tikkun Olam, repairing the world, I found their chosen line of work to be an especially potent and poetic reminder of their resilience. Art upholstering operated for nearly 65 years, and the outdated, sometimes damaged pieces that came through their doors always left with an air of renewal. My grandparents worked together to literally recover their own lives. Their past was never kept a secret from me or their other grandchildren, but the details have been divulged pretty sporadically. I learned vague timelines when they spoke to my grade 3 classroom. I uncovered untold horrors just from watching their video testimonies. And I even recently discovered some new information in hospital as my Zadie's anesthetic was wearing off. I've had to be a bit of a detective on my fact-finding mission, which ultimately brought me to the most meaningful experience of my life, March of the Living. In the spring of 2008, I was fortunate enough to be one of the many thousands of participants in the 20th landmark delegation, which brought together students from around the world. Together, we encountered the remnants of our tragic past in Poland and experienced the hope of our future in Israel. On this journey, I made several vows which have guided the trajectory of my adult life. I vowed to become a witness, to challenge and combat Holocaust denial, to promote an international agenda of coexistence, to understand the importance of the existence of Israel, to actively remember all those who were murdered and ensure the lessons of the Holocaust never be forgotten. That last vow is very important. To actively remember is to remember and act. To learn from history, but also to enter into it. March of the Living was and is a siren for your soul. It's an alarm for all your senses and an awakening which mobilized my mind. When I returned, I was compelled to make changes. I volunteered as a facilitator at the U of W Holocaust Symposium. I donned my blue jacket whenever possible at ceremonies. I became a millionaire and executive member of my Hebrew Mishnah synagogue. Shout out Hebrew Mishnah. And I went back to Paris with my bubby to visit the sites I'd only known from her stories. I even chaired a special event called Become B'Yachad, where survivors had the opportunity to go to the Bima and become Bar Bat Mitzvah for the first time. This event really demonstrates how we can honor our survivors. By fulfilling in the present what was unfulfilled in the past, we become vessels of hope for the future. We can transform regret into redemption. My grandparents taught me this transformation is possible. I believe that the best way to validate their legacy is to create one of my own. They have given me the freedom and power to pen my own story, and being a part of theirs has been the greatest honor of my life.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Tatiana Roitman-Mann, and I am going to perform in memory of my grandmother, Lyubov Shostet, who is a Holocaust survivor and who left us this past November of 2020. My family and I immigrated to Canada from Fastov, Ukraine in 1990. I will be performing a short piece for you by Charles Valentin Alcan, a French Jewish composer who was one of the very few composers at the time who identified themselves as Jewish. The piece is called Ancient Melody from the Synagogue. I believe it is imperative that we, the descendants and the children and the grandchildren of the survivors, remember their plight, because the forces that caused the Holocaust are very much with us today, and it is up to us to stop them and to pay attention. Добрый вечер, уважаемые слушатели. Меня зовут Татьяна Ройтман-Манн. Я внучка Любви Шильштут, которая выжила Холокост, но, к сожалению, покинула нас в ноябре 2020 года. Я посвящаю мое исполнение ей, моей бабушке. Я хочу исполнить для вас короткое произведение, написанное композитором Чарльзом Валентином Алканом. Это был еврейский композитор, который жил в Париже в середине XIX века. К тому же он был единственный композитор того времени, который открыто признавал, что он еврей. Я считаю, что это наша обязанность потомков, детей и внуков и правнуков, тех, кто выжили Холокост, не забывать их, не забывать о том, что случилось. Потому что силы, которые создали Холокост, с нами до сих пор. И это просто наша обязанность их остановить, и чтобы такое больше никогда не произошло.
On behalf of all of us at Jewish Child and Family Service, I would like to thank all the participants who took part in today's presentation. Thank you to Edith Kimmelman, Isaac Gottlieb, Clara Belkin, Ruth Stargarder, Oleg Pokanovsky, Sky Neller, and Tatiana Reutman-Mann. Each of you brought your distinct voice, whether through words or music, to the theme of Holocaust remembrance. You have each made a difference. A special thank you to Shanna Menkes for all her technical assistance. And thanks to all of you who have joined today over Zoom or over the phone While we may not actually see you, your presence and your interest helps shine a light on this topic. We appreciate your support and thank you very much for joining us today. And now Margarita will conclude in Russian.
От имени всех нас в Еврейском агентстве семьи и ребенка мы хотели бы поблагодарить всех принявших участие в сегодняшнем мероприятии. Спасибо всем, кто присоединился сегодня к нам через Zoom или через телефон. Каждый из вас принес свою лепту в сохранение памяти Холокоста. Спасибо всем. Мы ценим вашу поддержку. Благодарим вас. Thank you for joining us today.